This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
When you are sad, what could cheer you up? A funny joke? A silly dance? Or perhaps a ghost visiting you while you sleep? And then we take a look at the story of a helpless ant, not insect, a helpless aunt, sister of your mother or father. You know what I'm talking about. Then we take a look at the story of a helpless ant who has quite the predicament. Is it possible that her niece is being stalked by a demonic spirit? Or is the real danger closer than any of them think? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys have some awesome plans for the weekend, and I hope your plans include the Dead Rabbit Radio movie night this weekend, October 17th at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you can't make that, we're going to have the very first Dead Rabbit Radio movie morning, October 18th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you want to join us for either of those, all you got to do is sign up for the Patreon, either the paid or free memberships. We'll let you hang out with us and watch some spooky short horror films. I can't wait. I'm really excited about the morning one. And actually, I always find short horror films, I don't get to watch them. I wait to watch them with you guys, so I'm really excited. I think I found some good stuff this time. But someone who always finds good stuff no matter where they look, everyone get on your feet and give it up for one of our legacy Patreon supporters, Gregory F. Woohoo, yeah, he's running on in, doing a little dance in his cap and gown. Woohoo, yeah. You're like, what? Why is he so fancy? Well, as I was looking up who still supports the Patreon, I saw that he has a university email address. Ooh, fancy Dan there, Gregory. You went to university. I'm not going to say which one, obviously. But Gregory F., you are going to be our captain. He's all sweating. He's like, oh, please don't dox me, bro. I'm not going to dox you. I'm assuming he's graduated at this point, too. He supported the Patreon for so long. Maybe he still goes there. Maybe he's in the master's program. I don't know. But anyways, Gregory F., thank you so much for supporting the show. You're going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially through the Patreon or the merch store or anything like that, it's totally fine. It really is. From the bottom of my heart, you don't have to support the show financially. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. That is how you can help the show grow. Okay, Gregory, you ready to get this party started? Let's go ahead and toss you the bunny bicycle. Everyone climb on board our two-wheeled mode of transportation. We should have a tricycle, too. I don't know what I would call it, though. Everyone hop on board the bunny bicycle as Gregory pedals us out of Dead Rabbit Radio Command all the way to Virginia. Inca, Inca, Inca. Inca, Inca, Inca. Inca, Inca, Inca. Headed all the way out to Virginia. Specifically, we're headed to Abingdon, Virginia. That's probably how you pronounce it. The year is 2009. We're about to meet a young couple. We have the wife. We'll call her Joan. She's the narrator. She's the one who posted this story. Her husband, we'll call him Patrick. And they are taking a cross-country journey because Joan's brother, who we will call Mark, recently killed himself. So sad story. They've already attended the funeral. Now they're headed back down I-81. And obviously this has been a big, exhausting trip. Because suicide comes out of nowhere. So does car accidents, right? Beheadings, things like that, industrial accidents. Outside of a long-term illness, most death is sudden. Sometimes you can see it coming, like you're like, dude, you don't look too good. But you don't actually think they're going to fall over from a heart attack. But you got pretty good idea. Yeah, last time I saw him, he bent over to pick up a penny. And by the time he stood back up, his face was as red as Bozo's nose. I'm like, that guy's obviously has some circulatory issues. But still, like, if you then walked away and then he keeled over from a heart attack, that happened to me once. Not the heart attack thing, but I was a Santa Claus one year. I was a Santa Claus. Like, Jason, does this have anything to do with a young man's suicide? Or are you just inserting yourself into the story? Well, I'm kind of doing both. It's kind of related. Not really, okay? Not really, but just give me a second. I don't think I've ever told this story on the show. But one year, a couple of years ago, I was Santa Claus for a dog rescue center or something like that. I don't even remember what it was. I wasn't supposed to be Santa Claus. My buddy, who's a professional Santa Claus, this true story. What? You know Santa Claus? He's the real Santa Claus? I have a good buddy of mine who during Christmas time, he does do professional Santa Claus stuff. So he does all these he has like a really expensive suit and people hire him to be Santa Claus. And I think sometimes he just does it. He just shows up at people's houses and breaks in Santa Claus clothes. Well, through a series of events, he wanted to be Santa Claus for this dog rescue shelter or something like that. And he couldn't do it. I just happened to cross paths with him one day because I've done some Santa Claus stuff on the site as well. And he goes, "Oh my God, can you be Santa Claus for me this weekend? This thing happened at work. I have to be at work all weekend." And he goes, "You'll get paid." I don't actually know if I did get paid. But anyways, he goes, "Maybe you'll get paid. Maybe you'll get paid in dog treats. Will you be Santa Claus for me?" I don't think I got paid. I think I was doing it for a friend. And because it was a dog shelter, what are they going to pay you? They need the money to save dogs. They're like, "Well, we can pay you $300, but that'll mean 6 dogs get executed on Monday." I was like, let me think about that. What kind of dogs are they? Anyways, I got a job or a volunteer thing to be a Santa Claus for a dog rescue shelter or something like that. And I don't know anything about it because I was just like picked because I happen to be Santa Claus dimensions, right? You're not going to go ask some skinny person. I go, "Yeah, sure, I'll be Santa Claus." So I went to this local pet store here in town, and the way it was, people would bring in their dogs, and the dogs would sit on me, and someone would take a picture of it. So talk about lost media, right? We're talking about lost media. You'll never hear the Barker boys or whoever those two paranormal YouTubers are. What is it, Cody and Sam? You'll never hear about this lost media for them. There are dozens of photographs of yours truly, the host of Dead Rabbit Radio, photographed in a Santa Claus suit with dogs. Truly lost media. There's in someone's collection some pervo who's into animals and Santa Claus. No, I'm saying, like, I'm sure, like, it's weird to think about, right? There's probably about 24 to 30 photos of me with dogs sitting on someone's mantle. They have no idea that it's me, or they don't care. They're like, "Hey, it's that guy who has that podcast." Anyways, I was Santa Claus, and they bring in these, and also, you guys are like, "Wait a second, Jason, don't you hate dogs?" It's not that I hate dogs. It's that I'm scared of most of them because I've had some pretty bad interactions with dogs. I'll put episodes in the show notes. I don't want to even go into that. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm in a pet food store. People are bringing their dogs in. The dog might attack me. That's a photograph. That's a photograph of Santa Claus fighting a dog. Everything was going fine. The suit was so heavy that I was just sweating through it. It was disgusting. I felt bad to give it back to the guy. But I'm sitting there taking photographs of these dogs, different dogs, wiener dogs, and then like bigger dogs like Great Danes, because these were fancy dancy people, right? They weren't bringing in like their mutts. They could afford to have a photograph taken with Santa Claus and their dog because they paid, right? The money went to the shelter. So these are all like thoroughbred dogs. There might have been a mutt or two. I don't know. But anyways, like, Jason, what's the point of this story? What's the point? Well, here's the thing. So I'm sitting there dressed as Santa Claus. I've already lost 10% of my body weight through sweat. And half of it was because the costume was heavy. The other half because I was scared of all the dogs. I'm like, And this guy came in. He's probably my age, if not a little bit younger. I don't know, but he walked in and he had a dog. And they're like, him and his wife wanted the photo of the dog on my lap, but the dog wouldn't get on my lap. And it was a medium-sized dog. And the guy goes, "Oh, just pick the dog up." I'll pick the dog up and put it on this man, this stranger I've never met before, who's sweating, half through fear. I'm going to pick this dog up and put it on his lap. So I watched this man reach down and grab the dog, and he's all, oh, he's trying to lift the dog up. And he's bent over really, really low, and he's trying to pick this dog up. The dog was probably like 80 pounds. It's not the heaviest dog in the world by any stretch of the imagination. I'm watching this guy trying to pick this dog up, and his face goes red, and then turned purple. And he still hasn't managed to pick the dog up. And I'm sitting there, and I'm going, that guy's about to die. I'm about to watch this man have a heart attack. I'm going to be dressed as Santa Claus doing CPR on a man. His dog will probably think I'm attacking him, so now I'm going to have to fight the dog off with one arm, while with the other arm I'm doing chest compressions. This man's about to die. I've never seen a man go from red to purple and still not finish the task. I mean, to be fair, I've never seen a man go from red to purple, period. But it'd be one thing if his face turned red and then he picked the dog up and he went, ta-da! No, this guy still had to pick up this giant dog. And his body was shutting down. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's about to die. And the angle I was sitting at, because he was right in front of me, I could see it. The photographer and the people kind of milling about did not see this. And I thought, this guy's about to die. But I just had to sit there with a big old Santa Claus grin on my face. Like the Grim Reaper waiting for a new catch. Until he finally picked the dog up, and I watched this man, because he was bent completely over. He finally picks the dog up, and he's carrying the dog over to me, and his face is still purple. And I'm thinking, dude, I hope you know that you have serious blood flow issues. I hope you understand that. I didn't say any of that. I just put the dog in my lap and took a picture, and then got the dog off. Not that way. Not that way. You guys know what I meant. I removed the dog from my lap. But I was like, oh my God, this guy is going to die. Why am I telling that story? Did I make a reference to a red face earlier? Why did I tell that story? Well, I was talking about the suicide. Oh, health problems. Sometimes you can see health problems coming a mile away. Well, that was that case. That Santa Claus story doesn't have anything to do with this story. But it might be the only joy we find in the next 10 or 15 minutes because this story is depressing. Let's get back to the story. Here. Joan and Patrick, they're on their cross-country trip home after going to Mark's funeral. They stop at a hotel, right? Or a motel, to be specific. A hotel goes up, a motel is only 1 or 2 stories. They're exhausted, right? It's a long trip, it's exhausting mentally, having to deal with all the funeral stuff. They crash at this motel. But a good night's sleep was not in their plans. Joan is soon to find out. Because she's laying there in bed and all of a sudden she wakes up. She's in a dark motel room. And the reason why she wakes up is because she feels that somebody is in the room with them. Now obviously she knows that her husband, Patrick, is there, but something else. And she originally thinks maybe there's some sort of animal in here. She gets this gut instinct there's an animal in the room, and she goes, I hope it's not a rat. And then she starts to hear a jingle, jingle, jingle. A jingle, jingle, jingle. It sounds like a dog collar. A dog collar jingling. They don't sound like I just did. I'll do a real dog collar sound effect. Jingle, jingle, jingle. That's the same sound effect. It's just quieter this time. Jingle, jingle, jingle. You know, you guys have all heard a dog collar with little bells on it. So, Joan is thinking, did someone's dog get into our room? Our locked motel room? Is that possible? She turns on the desk light. Click, click. But there's nothing in the room. I mean, obviously television set and a couch and bed and all that, but nothing else that shouldn't be there in that room. No animal, no dog to be seen. However, right when she turns that light on and she's looking around, she's like, what was that noise? She feels something jump up onto the bed. She doesn't see it, but she feels it. The mattress actually deforms like something had gotten onto the bed and she immediately realizes it's a dog. But there is no dog. She doesn't see a dog. She feels a dog on the bed. So a ghost dog. But Forrest Whitaker would not be visiting this grieving couple this night. I don't know why I always make a Forrest Whitaker joke. No, it's not that kind of ghost dog. It's just a regular old run-of-the-mill dead dog spirit in this hotel room. She can't see anything, but she can feel it on the bed. And that's when she senses another presence. She knows she doesn't see anything just yet. Wait, did she see the dog? Hold on. Let me take a look at my notes. Then she feels another presence in the room. She still doesn't see anything, but she can feel someone sitting down on the mattress by her feet, right over where the dog is at on the mattress. And she can actually see the mattress kind of take the shape of a butt. Not with like it's not like a crack. He's not wearing underwear, whoever this ghost is. But you know what I mean? You can kind of tell someone's sitting on a bed. She feels the presence of this dog. She can hear the jingling of his collar, and she now feels the presence of a man. And she realizes all of this stuff without seeing anything. She realizes all of this stuff. Well, actually, at the very beginning, right? So the dog's jumped on the bed, and then she gets this sense that someone else is in the room, filled with profound sadness. I don't know if I said that part yet. Let me back up a bit. You're like, let me guess. A really sad guy sat on her bed. Well, yeah, I guess you can fill in the blanks for yourself, but when she's sitting there and the dog jumps on the bed, she senses another presence, and it's a super sad dude. It's like the saddest person you'd ever meet. She doesn't see anything. She can just feel this sad presence in the room. The first thing that went through her mind was, I hope that's not Mark. If that's Mark, I'm going to totally freak out. If my dead brother's ghost is in the motel room with me, I don't know how I will even deal with that. But luckily for her, this is not the ghost of her dead brother. But unluckily for her, it is a ghost. She doesn't see anything, but she senses profound sadness, and she also gets this sense that this is an old man. This is an old man sitting on the foot of his bed. And at this point, she's trying to wake her husband up. Patrick, wake up. Wake up, but he won't wake up. He's dead asleep. No pun intended. But Joan keeps trying to wake him up. Patrick, wake up. And she said, listen, I've obviously spent many nights sleeping next to my husband. It was really weird. It was almost as if he was drugged. It was almost as if he had some sort of narcotic in his system that is making it impossible for him to wake up. Because no matter what she does, he is not rousing. Joan, realizing that she has to deal with this all alone, she's laying there in bed, and she sees the indent of a human butt, and the indent of a dog sitting on the bed as well, or standing. A minute or two pass, and she finally says, "What do you want?" But there's no response. A few moments later, both the sensation of a man and a dog being in the room slowly faded away. She said later, after she kind of collected herself, obviously she didn't do it this night, and she had all of the fallout from her brother's suicide to deal with as well, but later on, she said, well, I don't know what that was. I obviously think it was a ghost. Something was interacting with the room that was unseen, and I got this horrible sense. So she started trying to do some internet research to see if there was any sort of suicide in that motel, her room specifically, a suicide or a homicide or some sort of horrible death. And she wasn't able to find anything conclusive, which isn't super odd. A lot of times most suicides and most homicides, well, a lot of homicides get reported, but most suicides never make it in the newspaper. Because it's not newsworthy. It's tragic, but it's not newsworthy. It's the most monumental news you may have gotten, or Joan may have gotten, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really not going to be in the news, unless it's truly unusual. If you want to commit suicide, which don't, obviously, I'm not giving you tips, but if you You're like, Jason, don't finish your sentence. What I was going to say is, it would have to be so insane, your method of suicide, that it would be in the papers. Maybe even in Ripley's Believe It or Not, if it's crazy enough. But obviously, don't commit suicide. Do not commit suicide. But most suicides are never in the newspaper. You usually hear about them because you're connected to the person who killed themselves, and that's about it. It's almost never even in the obituaries. So it's not odd that she didn't find any information about this. She says, I do believe, this is what she took away from this, I believe that was the ghost of a man who had also killed himself. And he knew how brokenhearted I was over the loss of my brother. And him being a brokenhearted soul as well wanted to have some solace. Two people, two different lives, but suffering from the same type of pain. He found a common soul in Joan, and maybe he felt he was comforting her, and in a way also comforting himself. It's an interesting ghost story. I will be honest, though, I totally thought she saw the ghosts. When I typed the notes up, obviously, I didn't put that she saw the ghosts. But this is a story that I've been having ready to go for a while, and I go, oh, she saw an old man ghost. She didn't actually see the old man ghost, but she felt him. Right? You're like, yeah, Jason, it's cool. You're like, if there's a suicide ghost in my house, I want to see it. She didn't see it. However, I will say, I do believe the story. I do believe it was paranormal, that it wasn't just all made up in her head, because she was watching things interact with her environment. I will say, I mean, it is possible to cover up a suicide or just not even be newsworthy in the first place. The fact that his dog is there kind of makes me question the suicide angle. Because the dog didn't commit suicide. And if he killed the dog, then that's homicide or peticide. And then he kills himself, which, unfortunately people do that. But I don't know if it's necessarily a suicide victim. I wonder if it is an old man who is haunting that hotel room, or maybe that general area, who lost someone himself to suicide. And him and his faithful dog show up and visit people who are going through the same pain. In fact, let's put on our conspiracy caps for this. I have no proof of this at all. But a lot of people, I have proof of this first part. A lot of people who kill themselves prefer to do it at hotels and motels, because it's a really grim answer, but because they don't want to have their loved ones have to clean it up or find the body. So they won't necessarily kill themselves in their house. They do. People do commit suicide in all sorts of locations. But people will get a hotel room. There's a big issue with people going to Vegas specifically to kill themselves. They go out there, they get a really fancy room, they're living high on the hog, and then they jump out the window or shoot themselves or overdose on pills or whatever method they had already picked. These aren't people who went to Las Vegas and lost all their money and killed themselves. That does happen. But these are people that when it's investigated, it turns out all the warning signs were there and they planned to go to Vegas to kill themselves. One last big party. So I wonder, I was thinking about this. What if this ghost isn't the victim of suicide himself? What if he's there to prevent other people from killing themselves? Now, Joan didn't need that. She wasn't going to kill herself. Now, imagine that an old man checked into that room. He's in his 50s, 60s, doesn't have any friends, doesn't have any family, doesn't have a career, and he's just done with everything. And he checks into that room and he's made his peace with taking his own life. He's happy about it. That's one of the weird things, too. People go, I can't believe that guy killed himself. He was so happy. He had a really rough life, but he was happy towards the end. That's pretty typical among suicide victims as well. They're happy because they finally have made the decision to do it. They're no longer tormented. They've been thinking about it for decades. Most people who kill themselves, they think about it from childhood or from teenage on. Very few suicides is someone going, oh my God, I lost my job and my wife left me and I'm going to be homeless. That's the low percentage of suicides. Most suicides are people who suffer from suicidal ideation for years, if not decades. And so when they finally say, you know what, I'm going to do it, I'm going to kill myself, I've finally figured out how I'm going to do it and where I'm going to do it, they're actually really happy. It's very deceiving because they finally made the decision to pull the trigger, no pun intended, and go for it. So it throws off their loved ones. They go, wow, Denise is looking great. I haven't seen her this happy in years. And then she slits her wrist in a bathtub. The ghost may appear to people who are going to kill themselves. To help them in some way, maybe. I don't know. Maybe to scare them. I don't know. If some guy puts a noose around his neck, Beetlejuice shows up, you're all, ah! That's it, I'm not killing myself. I don't know. Maybe he is there to keep people from killing themselves, and she's just an incidental. She's also in this. Could just also be an old man ghost and a dog that just happened to be in this room at this time. We're adding all this backstory to him. She did it as well. She goes, I bet it was a suicide victim. And I would accept that if the dog wasn't there. But, maybe the dog's so loyal. They have that story about that famous Japanese dog that always walked with Richard Gere to the train, and then Richard Gere dies one day, and then the dog kept going to the train until the dog died, and now there's a statue of the dog. I don't remember the name of the movie, and after yesterday's episode, where I got two movies completely confused, and talked about eunuchs for 20 minutes, I'm not even going to try to guess what that dog movie was. But interesting, right? I do believe it was an actual real haunting. You don't always have to see the ghost. If she just felt the presence, I probably wouldn't have talked about it, honestly. I thought that she saw the ghost, but I typed it up in the first place because just the idea of the impressions in the bed, that in and of itself is proof of ghosts. In some ways, more proof, because you're watching it interact with the physical environment. But I'm curious what you guys have to think. Was he also a suicide ghost appearing in front of Joan, or was he trying to comfort Joan because he knew the pain of losing someone to suicide as well? Is he trying to keep people from killing themselves at this hotel? Is he just a ghost? A ghost who likes hanging out. And he just happened to be here on this night, this troubling night. Because it's funny, now that I think about it, he didn't comfort Joan at all. In fact, he completely disturbed her. Oh, I have one more thing. It's very weird the husband was drugged, or felt like he was drugged. Which makes me think it might not have been a ghost at all. This might have had nothing to do with Mark's suicide. This may have had nothing to do, you know where I'm going with this. This may have nothing to do with anything. This could have been an alien abduction. And that's how she perceived the series of events, through her lens of grief and the spirit of the dead visiting her. Because the other person not being able to be woken up, that's not something we see in typical ghost stories. It's something we see all the time in alien stories. And we've had one or two pretty powerful demon-type stories or entities, dark entities that are inhuman, be able to make other people in the house fall asleep while one person remains awake. Off the tip of my head, I don't remember what those stories were, but there's a ton of UFO stories like that. So who knows? A very interesting story. It's basic, it's heartbreaking, but it could also lead down many paths. And it's possible that someone out in Virginia, near Abingdon, drive down I-81. Start checking in motels. Find this... You know how many motels are along an interstate? And you don't even know what room it is? You have to stay at every room at a hotel hoping to find an old man and a ghost. But you finally find the right motel. You finally find the right room. And you're like, oh yeah, Jason wanted me to be here. Jason wanted me to be here. Sounds like a grinder hookup. See you soon. No, you're like, Jason wanted me to be here. I'm here. Now all I have to do is fall asleep and the ghost will show up. And then you fall asleep, and then 20 minutes later you wake up, and you hear a jingle, jingle, jingle. Jingle, jingle, jingle. And you go, it's the dog! But it's not. The last thing you see is a gray alien's hand covering your mouth, stifling your screams, as it pulls a scalpel out and cuts open your body. You're like, wait, did Joan have a giant scar on her? Why were the aliens jingling? I don't know, but it would be kind of funny if you went to go investigate ghosts and you're like, I have my sage and I have my tape recorder, I'm going to get some EVPs, and the next thing you know, you're getting bushwhacked by gray aliens. They're beating the tar out of you. It wouldn't be fun. Like, Jason, what? That's not funny. I don't want to get beat up. You get beat up. It wouldn't be funny if it happened to you. You're right. But it'd be funny if it happened to somebody else that wasn't either of us. And it'd be even funnier if they then told us about it and we could talk about it on Dead Rabbit Radio. We haven't covered alien stuff in a long time. I want to get back into going through the thinkaboutitdoc.com website because it's been a long time since we've covered some alien stuff. I have a really, really cool alien story that takes place in the Middle East that I've been prepping for a while. Maybe we'll do that in about a week or two. I still got some more research to do, but hotspot of the world, tons of weaponry, tons of war in that region, and it has been that way for hundreds, if not thousands of years, but very few UFO stories come out of the Middle East. You can almost count them on both hands. But I found another one that's absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts, but we'll cover that one in a couple weeks. I gotta get some more notes together. Gregory, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world. Famous Carpenter Copter. We are leaving behind Virginia, waving goodbye to this old man ghost, waving goodbye to his phantom dog, possibly waving goodbye to a few gray aliens hiding in the bushes. We're leaving behind Virginia. Why don't you fly us all the way out to... Here, I'm going to do an audible. I'm going to change that story. We're going to switch to something else. Because that story, while I really like it, we'll cover it next week. I don't know if it paired well with that story we just covered. Gregory, keep flying the Carpenter Copter. We're headed all the way out to a house in Anywhere, USA. We're headed all the way out to this location. We don't know exactly where it is or when the story took place, but we're about to meet a young woman. We'll call her Sarah. She's in her late 30s. Sarah's a mom, and she's at home with her family, and they're just watching some television, watching the old boob tube as they're sitting on the couch. When all of a sudden, something falls. Not through the roof, nothing that dramatic. Something falls to the ground, and she goes, when she posted this online, she goes, for the life of me, I cannot remember what fell. I don't know if it was the remote. I don't know if it was a croissant. I don't know if it was a shoe. I don't remember. But she's sitting on the couch and something falls and hits the ground. Specific stance. She says, this thing's on the ground. I bend over. She says, I'm taking a step forward as I'm leaning forward. And right when my foot touches the ground, my hand touches the item on the floor. She said it was a very specific pose she took, and the timing was perfect. Her foot touched the ground as her hand touched the item. And then, get out of the way, you bum. What are you doing there? Keep going. She's no longer in her house. She is actually in that exact same pose, but now she's no longer at home. She finds herself on the curb of a city that she doesn't recognize. Her foot is in that exact position. Her back foot is in the neutral position. Her hand is touching something on the ground, picking something up on the ground, but the location is completely changed. She's no longer at home. She's in this bustling city with cars flying by. She hears the horn honks. She hears the engines. She looks up and she goes, obviously she's in shock because she's not at home anymore, but she begins to see details, and these details are things she's going to keep remembering over the years because she does not know what happened. She said, I looked up and I wasn't at home. I was in the middle of the city, and all of these cars are driving by. And based on what I know about cars, which isn't a ton, she just knew that they were old-timey cars, not modern cars. She said, if I had to guess, the city I was in, I don't know, but the time period was probably the 1920s or the 1930s, based on the automobiles, old-timey stuff. Sarah is obviously in shock. How would you even process what was going on? She then looks down at herself, because she's still in that bend-over pose, and now she's kind of standing up and looking around, and she looks down. She's no longer a woman. She's a dude. She immediately can tell by the build, by the clothes, that she's a man, because she's wearing a nice suit. A nice suit, a nice long coat, great shoes. She has a hat on, which she doesn't see that immediately. She said she looks and there's water on the ground and she can kind of see her reflection there. As a car drives by, she kind of gets a glimpse of her reflection in the car window. Again, she's not processing all of this right away. These are things that she's kind of remembering. Everything's happening so fast. She sees that she has a hat. She sees that she's a man. Clearly a man, a man's face. But before she can really process all of this information, she's back in her living room. Her family sitting on the couch, watching television. Sarah said she's never told her family about this, ever. She never, ever told her family about this. This is one thing, obviously, on the internet where anonymity helps. Because it's quite a bizarre story. And as much as you and me, live in the world of the paranormal, most people don't. And some stories are just too weird. Some people go, hey, I saw a ghost in my house last night. Your coworkers may go, oh, that's really spooky. Telling them you teleported through time, most people would they wouldn't say that was spooky. They would worry about your mental health. And she didn't say anything to her family. She didn't share it with anybody. She's sharing it online for the first time. She had this quote. She said, quote, "It feels like what broke the connection, or whatever the hell it was, is when I stood up and I was back in my house." So it was within seconds that all of this played out. 10, 20, 30 seconds. It was very, very quick. Because remember, she's bent over, she looks up, she sees all this stuff, she sees a reflection, she's back home. She didn't have really a lot of time to even think about what was going on, but as she looks back on it, quote, "It feels like what broke the connection, or whatever the hell it was, is when I stood up, I was back in my house. It was so vivid, detailed. I could hear everything and it felt like I was there. I can still see it now like it's a memory of a place that I've been. It felt so real. Absolutely impossible and makes no sense, but this is one of the creepiest things I've ever experienced," unquote. Like a memory of a place she had been to before. But at the same time, a lot of people were asking her questions about this. She posted it online, and people brought up, well, maybe that was you in a past life. And she goes, I don't know. But she doesn't really think so. She goes, it didn't feel like a past life. Even though it's a place that she says she's been to before or felt like it, a memory of a place that I've been. She said when I was there for that short amount of time, I felt like a stranger. I felt like a stranger. It was a memory of a place I had been before, but it wasn't like she was back in an old body or a past life. Some other people responded to this with similar stories. Again, this is really interesting because when someone posts something that's so off the wall, it's not a typical ghost story, people who have things like this happen to them assume they're the only ones who have ever dealt with this. Imagine if you had never heard a ghost story in your life, ever. There's no television shows about it, no books, not even horror movies about supernatural spirits, and you had a run-of-the-mill haunting. You'd hear knocking late at night. You'd hear footsteps moving down the hallway, and sometimes you'd see a silhouette at the foot of your bed. You wouldn't have any context for any of that if culturally there were no ghost stories in our world, and you had what we consider a scary yet basic haunting. It'd be the most terrifying, most perplexing thing you could ever imagine because there's no context for it. So when someone posts stuff like this was posted online by someone going by the name Mystic Angel 504. A couple other people had similar stories. One person said that it wasn't him, but his father. He goes, my father always had this weird memory and he never really knew what to make of it. How do you contextualize what I'm about to say? He goes, when my dad was in the army during Vietnam, he would be at the barracks showering, taking a shower. This happened to him a couple times. He'd be at the barracks, he'd be taking a shower, and then he would begin to feel and look like a black man. Specifically, this is kind of weird, right? Because it's kind of like on the first story, the woman was feeling that this man was sad. This guy's dad, he goes, he was in the army, and during Vietnam, when he was in the barracks showering, he would feel and look like a black man, but just not any old black man, a black man who served during World War II. So another soldier, they had that link. And he just felt like this was a man who fought during World War II. No proof, right? He didn't look down and see the dog tags. He didn't know the guy's name. But it was almost like when he was showering, there was this link with this guy he'd never met before, but from the past. Another person said that when they were visiting Warwick Castle, which I think we've covered on the show before, a man said when he was visiting Warwick Castle in the United Kingdom, he was a tourist, he was walking around, and then for just a few seconds, all of a sudden, he flashed into the past. He felt like he was a man, that his entire essence had traveled back into the body of a man who was being dragged into the dungeon. And the guy said, it lasted a couple seconds. I'm walking down the hallway and I felt myself in the body of this man. I'm in the past. I'm being dragged down in the dungeon. And I felt that this man was innocent. He was an innocent man who was about to be tortured. And I got to experience that horror for a few seconds. That example, that last one, I think, is more closely related to a ghost. Because he's actually in a location where that would have happened. And you could have a ghost glimmer, a ghost memory. I don't know if he actually traveled back into the past. It might have been a ghost. But who knows, right? Now, this is what's interesting about this phenomenon. I mean, obviously, it involves time travel. It involves this idea that we are all interconnected. Outside of the torture dungeon one, where it could just be your imagination, too, as well, right? You're imagining what it would be like to be carried down that passageway. That one could be the standard one. It could be a little bit of imagination. It could be a typical ghost. The other two do feel like some sort of bridge between timelines. And I think, too, they're also not as dramatic. They're run-of-the-mill stuff, bending over and picking something up on a street corner, or taking a shower. Very run-of-the-mill. I mean, if you think about it, it's fascinating. It's creepy. I would worry about getting stuck. But again, these are so fleeting. All of these are just a matter of seconds. It seems like you couldn't get stuck. It seems that reality snaps you back. And there's 100 different ways you could look at this. I mean, what it could come down to, let's focus on the first story we had. There could be no connection between those two people. They're obviously not in the same location or the same time period, but we have Sarah and the man on the street. They may have bent over and interacted with something, bent over and touched something in just the exact same way that, in a way, the universe got confused. You imagine, I don't believe in the simulation theory, but I mean, that could definitely explain all of this. But you imagine the universe has all of this data being generated by all living things doing everything. Could it make mistakes from time to time? Literally in this case. I mean, it's funny because I don't believe in the simulation theory, but stories like this are perfectly suited for that. That these are glitches, because that's exactly how you would describe it. Reality is shorting out. You have this idea that the mundane life can lead to these absolutely bizarre, so crazy you won't even tell your family, your closest loved ones about it. That you could be sitting there on your couch and you could reach over to grab that bag of Doritos, and the next thing you know, it's the year 1942, and you're reaching over and grabbing an ammo belt to put into your machine gun. And the next thing you know, you're grabbing the Cheetos again. Or what was it, Doritos? You Mandela affected. You didn't buy Doritos in this universe, you bought Cheetos instead. You also have to wonder if it reversed, right? Imagine that you are a man walking down the street in 1929, and you reached over to pick up a leaflet, and the next thing you know, you're standing in a living room. The year is 2019 or whenever the story took place. You see a large flat screen TV, color images playfully dancing around. You hear people behind you. You turn and look. You see a father and two kids. You have no idea who they are or where you are or what is going on. And then you realize you have boobs. You're a woman standing in a living room, unlike anything you've ever seen before. And the next thing you know, you're back on the street. You're back in the city where you were. How would they process it? It's always easier for someone to process information from the future going into the past. It's very easy because you know it. You know it even if you don't have a broad grasp of history. Like, she could look at those cars and go, we're talking 1920s, 1930s. If someone from that time period flash forwarded to our time period and saw a Tesla, a Volkswagen Bug, and an e-bike go down the street, there's no context for it. There's zero context for it. You would just see these weird vehicles that make no noise as they're driving down the street. So you couldn't go, oh, I'm in the year 2025. No, they don't know. So it's way more whiplash for someone from the past coming to the future. Much like the very famous documentary Encino Man showed, it's not easy. Imagine that you're a black soldier in World War II, and every so often when you're taking a shower, you see yourself as a white man taking a shower. And you don't know exactly who he is, but you get this sense that he's a fellow soldier. But is he a soldier in the future? Is he a soldier in some different war? You don't know. You just get this feeling about him that he's a soldier. And maybe you get the feeling about him that he's fighting a different war. And then after a couple seconds, you're a black man taking a shower again during World War II. And think about the creepiest example of that. We'll wrap it up like this, because I didn't think about this. This is all just coming off the top of my head. I love talking about this. I love doing this show, and I'm glad we've been able to find a good format where I can continue to do the show, but have more time so I can, do other stuff and take care of myself. Think about the story of that last man. Imagine being an innocent man dragged through the castle. I didn't do it, guys. You have the wrong man. Let me go. Let me go. Come on. You rat. You know where you're going. Where all rats go. The dungeon, mate. No, I swear I didn't steal the crown jewels. I didn't do it. Shut up, or we're gonna poke you in the stomach with the spear. Oh, I mean, that's pretty big. Okay, I'll shut up. It's a pretty big threat. Yeah, that's what I thought. Come here, everyone says they're innocent. Don't worry, you'll be guilty once the torturers get a hold of you. No, please, all talking again starts getting stabbed. Okay, I'm quiet. Imagine you're being dragged to your death through this dungeon, and then all of a sudden you're standing in a well-lit tunnel. A bunch of people in front of you, a bunch of people behind you. You don't recognize their weird clothes. You don't recognize the light is coming from electrical outlets. You can kind of make out what they're saying. It sounds like English, but they're pronouncing the words weird. But it doesn't matter. None of that matters. You're no longer being dragged through this tunnel to be tortured into confessing for a crime you did not commit. You're safe. Your prayers have been answered. In an odd way, sure. You don't know what these clothes you're wearing are. You don't know why everything is changed and all the people around you have changed, but at least you're safe for just a few seconds. And then the two people's souls snap back to where they came from. And once again, this innocent man is being dragged to his painful demise. He spent a few seconds in the future, in our time, a few extra seconds of freedom given to him by a glitch in the system. He will always wonder what happened in that tunnel, what he saw, where he was. He'll always wonder about that till the day he dies. But unfortunately for him, that day is tomorrow. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great one, guys.